Braylon Mullins finally hit the floor in meaningful action, and we're about to tell you why he's one of the best wings in the country. Next on Locked On NBA Draft with No Ceilings.
You are Locked On NBA Draft with No Ceilings, your daily podcast on the future stars of the NBA, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On NBA Draft with No Ceilings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. My name is Tyler Metcalf. Thanks for making us your first listen every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Join me as always is Tyler Rucker. Rucker, scale of 1 to 10. I know the answer, but how pumped are we that Braylon Mullins is back on the court?
There's not a number that exists, Metcalf. I could not be more thrilled for Mullins Mania to be back on the court and making his collegiate appearance. I guess second appearance, but
most
coming out party
appearance.
Yeah. There you go. So, doing great. Just thrilled to be here.
Yeah, this should be a fun one because we got one of the more intriguing freshmen in the country back on the court, getting real minutes against a real team, stuff that we always love to see. We'll have some other takeaways and reactions and stuff to UConn versus Kansas, and keep an eye out. We might have something on Cam Boozer and that Duke game coming out a little later. But we're focusing today on Mullins, and that's where we got to start because for a lot of us at No Ceilings, he was a top 10 guy coming into the year. He's 6 on my board. I know he's super high on yours. He obviously, his first game back from injury was on Friday against Illinois. He only played 10 minutes, didn't really do a whole lot to be expected from a pure freshman. First game back from injury, you got to shake off the rust. But then against Kansas, at Kansas, 23 minutes, 6 of 12 shooting, 3 of 9 from 3, 2 of 2 from the line, 5 rebounds, no assists, no blocks, 1 steal, 17 points. Where do you want to start with Braylon Mullins?
I guess I wanted to ask you, was it more impressive than the box score even told you in terms of just like, oh, your second game looking like this? He didn't look like someone, getting the rust off.
Yeah, and I'm going to go into a little more detail on this in my Friday scouting files over at NoCeilingsNBA.com. We got a ton of stuff up. Go check out the website and subscribe while you're there. Why not? But his just unwavering confidence, like he just looks so comfortable. We saw it in his high school film. We saw it in his AAU film. We saw it in any film of anything he's ever played in, where it's like, no, I'm good out here. Like I know how good I am. It doesn't matter that, it's my second game back. It doesn't matter that I'm playing at Kansas in one of the toughest environments in the country to play in. I'm good. And I'm going to go out there and just do my thing. I thought that was incredibly encouraging because a lot of the times we'll see guys go out there and hesitate and, question their injury or, not want to step on the toes of the starters or anything like that. But that's not how Dan Hurley teams and players operate. And that's certainly not how Braylon Mullins operates.
I mean, he looked like a guy that's been at UConn for 3 years, and that's exactly what you just said is right on the money. Dan Hurley usually has depth in roster, and he's not afraid to, okay, you don't have it, next guy up. And quickly in that game, you found out that Hurley was like, I got to get him. I got to keep him on the floor. Yeah. Not only get him on the floor, I got to keep him on the floor because he was just sensational. And, me and you talked about this preseason. We've done a couple of video breakdowns of like his high school tape on a No Ceilings NBA YouTube channel. And we were like, hey, this is a guy that me and you both were really high on. I have him 6th on my board too. And had a lot of people reach out like 6, like what? Like he's going to be a multi-year college player. And I'm like, just wait till this kid hits the ground running. Cause you see him at first and it's going to be the typical, white kid, 6'6", could shoot it. All right, so he's just going to be a floor spacer. And then you're like, no, watch the tape. And this is a two-way player. I thought the defensive activity, like there was some good learning plays, like some good film to learn from, but it was more of like anxious, alert, like hyperactive activity. Sometimes I was like, all right, he needs to take a breath out there because he looks like he just chugged a bunch of espresso shots before he got on the floor. But that's what you want to see. You want to see someone that you have to calm down and not have to like turn them back up. So I thought there was good awareness on both sides. There was good flashes. And, he finished with 17 and he had a couple shots that just in and out. Like, I was like,
Yeah.
this could have been a much bigger box score even too, shooting. So I thought it was a great second game back. I mean, I was like, oh my goodness, freshman stepping up on the road at Kansas. This is big time.
Well, let's stick with the offense
Mhm.
for a couple minutes because I can go on for hours about the defense. But his main selling point is the shooting. And if people are listening and didn't watch the game and just look at the box score and they're like 3 of 9 from like what did he do? Like who anyone can do that. But then you actually when you watch the game and you see the attempts, you see the activity, it's not your normal 3 of 9. And I think he's going to have a lot of box scores like that this year where there'll be games where he hits 6 or 7 threes, but there'll also be some where he's probably sub 30, but taking 9, 10, 11 attempts a game just because he has that confidence. He has that quick trigger. But when you see him move off ball, it's everything you dream of in a movement shooter with the change of pace, without the ball, running off screens, running tightly off screens to lose his guy, recognizing whether his defenders chasing him over screens or going under and then settling back in and finding those open pockets to settle into to create passing lanes for his teammate. And then what I also really, really, really loved was once the shot went up, it wasn't like he was just standing there watching it. It's like, all right, shots up. Now what? It's like, all right, it's going in. Cool. Getting back on defense, picking up my guy. Ooh, rimmed out. We got the offensive board. No problem. I'm already relocating to an area to make myself available. And now the kick out is coming and I'm putting it right back up again. It's like a quarterback with a short term memory is like, threw a pick last time. No biggie. Let's go get it this next possession. And just that confidence in your second game at Allen Fieldhouse was really just a joy to watch. And then you see defenders start running him off the line. And it's like, all right, no problem. I'll just get to the rim and show a little bit of patience and craft and physicality around scoring at the rim, attacking these closeouts as well. So without the ball, it's everything you want from an elite off ball shooter scorer. And then when he gets run off his spots, he still has the skills, size, athleticism to still be an impact, which is oftentimes a big differentiator with these freshmen, sniper shooters.
I mean, he had at least 3 3-point attempts that were just like, oh, it was dead on. It just missed. So, a couple of those fall. You're talking about a 20-point game on the road in your second game. And I mean, Metcalf, this kid never stops moving off the ball. He is a Tasmanian devil on the court, and it's awesome to watch. If you're a draft fan, if you're a basketball fan, and you've watched guys in the last couple of years, it's a lot of Jordan Hawkins, but this one is like moving with vengeance. It's calculated. How do I get you to react? Like there's a possession I rewound like 5 times where he didn't get the ball, but it was like he was just running into every possible screen. Like the defender also was like, "Gosh, would you just stop moving?" Like it. So it's one of those guys that understands the importance of movement off the ball, because not only can it create a potential opportunity for you as a scorer, it creates lapses in the defense. And a lot of time we don't see this a lot of times with guys these days, is how important it is just to be an off ball, like be active, be cutting, be moving, because it can create confusion with the defense and open up something for the offense. So he is such a smart player on both sides of the ball. And that's where it's going to get really intriguing. You hinted preseason to me, you're like, hey, but don't just get obsessed with the offense. There's defensive potential here too. I know we could talk about that in a sec, but there's just a complete package, and it's a really impressive start to the year for someone that's going to only be getting better and showcasing the versatility, I think.
And earlier this summer, before I dove into his AAU and high school stuff, you throw out a lofty name to me. It's like, man, there's a lot of Klay Thompson in his offense. I'm like, go F yourself, first of all. But then you watch him, it's like, oh, there is. He moves like that activity, that confidence, that ability to read and react, the give and go type of stuff, shooting off platform, being super comfortable in any situation. It's eerily similar, and then he's not like he's 6'3". He's a legit 6'6", almost 200 pounds with some bounce who can get downhill. It's a really fun showing. Long season left. They're going to be tested a lot, but this is a team that we expect to go deep into the tournament because they're loaded yet again. They're deep yet again. And Mullins is kind of that skeleton key on offense that could really unlock a lot of their floor spacing and a lot of their off-ball scoring and activity. And when we look at NBA offenses like Golden State or Miami with a lot of that read and react, high off ball movement stuff, it's like, man, he's going to fit in anywhere he goes. But another reason he's going to fit in anywhere is because of the defense, which we'll get to right after this. What if sports were traded like markets? Now you can put your sports IQ to work in real time with Robinhood prediction markets. It's not you against the house. It's you participating in a live market. You can buy or sell your positions live all game long. Use your sports knowledge in the moments that matter. Robinhood prediction markets changes the game. It's people moving the action. So when momentum shifts, you can move with it. I always knew the game, but never had a dynamic way to apply that knowledge. Now I can actually take part live in a market powered by people. You're no longer just a spectator. Play by play, you decide. Trade every play with Robinhood. Now available across the US. Download the Robinhood app now to begin. All right, so I know you kind of hinted at it earlier of like, oh, Mullins, white guy, shooter, can't play defense, bad athlete. Wrong. Let's talk about the defense. What gets you excited on that end?
With scouting and looking at the player evaluation, looking at these guys prospects over the years, one of my biggest things with defense, I know you like this, is I've always been taught, you don't want to see a guy get center blocks for feet when what that means is like they just sit there and like, okay, you have to get going again to, sometimes it could be delayed response because you're not moving or keeping your feet active. It's amazing. Mullins is just constantly like bouncing. He's like bouncing around like a boxer that's trying to dance, around the ring. And there's some stuff he needs to work on with footwork, some closeout stuff, but it's more of like what I was talking about earlier in the episode of like hyperactive energy. He just looks so pumped out of his mind to be playing last night and getting minutes. So it's a lot of good stuff to work with. And there's also some really good fundamentals of like digging and the little extra stuff that you just geek out on. I know you're probably going to love it, but I thought it was a good first showing to build off of, a good foundation to be like, okay, this is a good start. Now let's see how it progresses.
Yeah, and he's my favorite 3-and-D wing in this class right now, and a large part of that is because of the defense and how well he moves his feet, how well he competes. There are a lot of guys kind of his size who slide their feet well, but they kind of take these like exaggerated steps where it's almost like they're like side galloping, if that makes sense, where it's like they're taking these big elongated steps instead of, like you said, just gliding side to side, light on their feet. Mullins is the latter in that realm where he's just super agile, super quick, not really reactive, but anticipates a lot of the stuff and isn't afraid of physicality. And then off ball, just the activity level is exactly what you want from that type of guy. A lot of the mistakes, even that feels harsh in this Kansas game from him, where it felt like a situation where it's a young guy, like you said, who is really pumped to be out there and is just overactive. It's like, all right, maybe next time we keep it to 1 Red Bull before the game instead of 4. But we always say we'd much rather have to tone down a guy than rub him up, and I don't have any concerns with that with Mullins.
There's a couple of times too where it's just like anticipating where the next rotation needs to be. Like you could see the mind was like perfectly, oh, I'm supposed to fly here, and he's looking where his teammate's going. So he's like, I'm supposed to go to the corner. One time, I think it was Marco Jackson had like a full head of steam and kind of crossed him up. And he tried to flip his hips and slide with him, but it was just like a split second too late. And I was like, that's fine. And then later in the game, he had a great sequence where it was like, there you go, in-game adjustments. We like to see it. But this ain't just a one-trick pony. This is a two-way player that's going to have a ton of upside. And I know, Clay's a big name to hear from some, like Klay Thompson, but like going back real quick to the offense, Mullins is so good he has this crazy movement, and all of a sudden, like a split second, he just gets perfectly balanced with a shot. And it's just, that's the stuff with Clay, where it's like shooters that can also, like, I can shoot with the low, like a really quick release. I could shoot, minimal window. You don't need a lot of space from Braylon Mullins offensively. And then defensively, he just looks like he's got the tools to be a plus defender because of not only the awareness, the anticipation, but the tools and the work ethic.
and especially once he adds like
Yeah.
10 to 15 pounds over the next couple years and, really gets into his physical peak, and he's probably going to end up at 6'6", 210-ish, I would guess, in that range at, a couple of years down the line at his ultimate peak. It's like, all right, well, with those feet, with those instincts, that's a guy who can guard basically anyone on the perimeter. Now, I want to play devil's advocate here
Yeah,
for a
yeah, yeah.
second because we've just been blowing them up here. Kansas isn't exactly loaded with perimeter scorers and shot creators. There was no Darren Peterson in that game. Marco Jackson had himself a nice little game. Trey White occasionally can go off. Melvin Council can do some fun stuff, but none of these are guys that we necessarily consider NBA level perimeter creators. Are you worried about when that happens? Do you think this would have looked significantly different for Mullins if Peterson was out there? And do you have any concerns about Mullins's defense and overall impact translating against NBA caliber athletes, players, creators?
Yeah, I think that's a fair question because I think, obviously, if Darren was out there, it would have looked a little different. We would have probably had some like, okay, it looks like, Darren looks a little bit better right there. But this is also just you watch this game and then you see him spacing the floor from deep offensively. And then, he gets switched on to Bryson Tiller, who is not small. I just got back from seeing him at Players Era, and that is it looks like an NFL defensive end at 6'8", 6'9". And he took him off the bounce and was just going right into him. He kind of gave him a shoulder, went up and under, and you're like, whoa, kid, like, all right. And then you see a couple sequences like that off the ball. Then you see some defensive just battling in there. So I think he's just a fighter. He's perfect for Dan Hurley. He's an absolute Dan Hurley dream. So now we want to see it come up and like, hey, they got East Texas A&M. All respect to East Texas A&M. Probably going to be a fun game for Braylon Mullins to get a little wild. And then you got Florida. And then you got Texas. So we're going to find out pretty quick. Like, hey, you're going to start getting some high-level defenders, Dalen Swain, Thomas Houck, whoever's going to be on the perimeter.
Oh, God, he's going to get matched up with Houck on that, isn't
Probably. He? I mean, it's going to be interesting. I think Mullins is smart enough and is going to battle enough that you're going to find out that this is going to be a kid that really starts taking his stride throughout the year. So I think he's going to have his growing pains, but for your first real minutes to be on the road at Kansas as a freshman, coming back from injury, you've missed all this time, it was just a really, really impressive performance. I still think this is a potential top 5 pick in this draft. I really do.
Final thoughts on Mullins's game. And for me, I think it's a matter of when, not if, in terms of him breaking into the starting lineup. It won't shock me if that's against Florida. I don't think it's going to be too long. It also won't shock me if Dan Hurley just kind of pushes that down the road and has him as this dynamic, game-changing six-man off the bench. But what really stood out to me in this game was that Mullins was out there in crunch time down the stretch in a close game against Kansas, at Kansas. So that spoke volumes to me, not only of how well he was playing, but also the trust that his teammates and his coaching staff have in him to leave him out there in his second game back, first with real minutes on the road, and a really, really big win for them.
That was the loudest endorsement possible. You're spot on, Metcalf. I mean, you're watching that tape, and all of a sudden, it's getting to real like, whew, this is going to be a thriller going right down to the end, and you're like, this kid's coming second game back, and they're leaving him in, and he was great. He battled. He got a couple big boards at the end, and I think he hit the last 2 free throws to kind of cinch the game for them. So I don't know. Maybe I'm just drunk in love when it comes to Mullins because I was high on him at the beginning of the year, but I watched that tape. I was expecting a little bit more of a like curve when it came to adjustment, and I was just like, man, this looks a good start. This is a really, really promising start. Are you that optimistic, Metcalf? Is there anything that I'm missing? Because we always try to be honest with fans, and like you said, we try to be devil's advocate to kind of be like, okay, now let's bring negativity into the mix. But is there anything you were wanting to see?
Yeah, I'm really fascinated to see how the handle looks when guys really get into them. Because it's a second game back. A lot of these teams, probably aren't diving into his high school film to really dive into his scouting. So it's like, all right, there's not a whole lot of tape on him, but now that we're starting to get some stuff, and as we continue to get more stuff, and teams can hone in on how good he is and how dynamic he is. It's like, all right, well, let's make him create something, or let's take his scoring away and turn him into a passer. Then what does it look like? Because that was one of my big questions. I think his handle's fine for his position. It's not to the level of him breaking guys down, at least not what I saw from last year. And then the passing, it's a lot of good, a lot of erratic. So what does it look like if defenders kind of load up on him a little more and they try to turn him into a passer? Now, UConn's offense thrives in those situations with their ball and player movement. But just curious to see what it looks like. And then, against Florida, if he gets matched up against someone as big as Thomas Houck, or Texas with someone as big as Dalen Swain, or, even if they throw like Boogie Fland, who's someone a little smaller and quicker, can he really disrupt him? So I just think there are a lot of really intriguing, like, one-on-one matchup stuff coming down the pipeline for him.
Yeah, I think the on-ball juice is definitely the one area I want to see a little bit more of. I think he's got the playmaking chops going back to high school stuff. Like he's a smart player there, but he even had a possession this Kansas game where he tried to dribble and got a little erratic and dribbled it off his leg, and he was like, okay. And so I mean, I need like 5 games from Mullins just to like you said, get the Red Bull out of the way. Like let's calm down a little bit. They're gonna have a gauntlet of some tough matchups. Marquette's coming up too, and that's gonna be a fun one going against Chase Frost. So my counter always with if bigger guys, how are we going to deal with them? Is like, well, how are they going to deal with this movement monster? Like, how are they going to handle a full game of I got to chase this kid around? So that's why these guys are dangerous. And if you also have more to the table than just being a shooter, I think that's where you really get cooking. And I think Mullins will showcase that, but it's just going to take some time. We need some reps, but great start, I think.
Absolutely. And he wasn't the only draft prospect in this game. We'll share our thoughts on everyone else right after this. The World Cup is coming back to North America for the first time since 1994, and with 48 teams for the first time ever. It's going to be massive. But let's be honest, getting tickets is usually the hardest part. That's why the Gametime app is clutch, finally giving fans a real advantage when it comes to snagging seats. With Gametime, you can track price drops in real time, get alerts when great seats open, and buy tickets the moment they hit the app. It puts the power back in your hands and makes going to the World Cup realistic instead of impossible. You pull up the app, and the layout makes it so simple to scroll through matchups and compare seat views. Pick a game, tap a section, and have your tickets locked in within minutes. No confusion, no hunting for fine print. Take the guesswork out of buying World Cup tickets and every match, concert, or event with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, download the app, make an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Gametime. All right, Kansas, UConn, both loaded teams. Did anyone else catch your eye?
Flory Badunga, I think for highs and lows is just a prospect I'm continuing to have some battles with self-evaluation wise. There's always a couple each year, but and it's more just trying to put his range, because you from game to game, it just feels like you're like, oh, I love it. Oh, I don't know. So he's just going to be a tough one. But like, hey, a bad game. Nah, I'm not saying he had a bad game, but a game where I'm like, okay, I kind of want a little bit more. I'm looking up. I'm like, okay, double with 2 blocks. That works. But what about you?
Yeah, and he just never feels as imposing as you kind of hope that he would. But then he has some awesome defensive flashes where, like, he switches a pick and roll and slides his feet and cuts off drives and then blocks his step back mid-range pull-up. And you're like, oh, well, tough to ask for much more than that. And then, next possession runs an empty corner pick and roll and puts down a one-handed lob over 2 defenders. So it's like, I don't know what to do with him. I think he's going to be a really good college player. I think he's improved a ton over last year. But when we talk about translation to the NBA, I struggle with what does it really look like at a high level. The other guy, Bryson Tiller, it just feels like his offense has totally disappeared these last couple games, where when he's not absolutely lethal shooting off the catch, seems like his overall impact is pretty inconsistent, unfortunately. But you saw him at Players Era, and you could not have been more effusive about how freaking big he looks. And I like a lot of the defensive stuff still. So I think he's just still a little more raw than we initially hoped after that Louisville game.
Tiller, I want Badunga to have Tiller's frame.
Yeah. Oh God.
So that's the tough
Okay,
part.
Can we just merge them?
That's the tough part is because like why I was excited to go to Players Era is to see these guys up close. Badunga was like on my list of like I gotta go see Badunga. I gotta see what's going on, and seeing him, I'm like, gosh, I just wish there was more meat because he's listed at 6'10", 235. He looks 225. So it's one of those, and I think he's going to be closer around 6'9" in shoes. So you're kind of like, okay, tweener ish. But he's just a flash guy. Like the flashes are like, wow. And if you just want more of it, and Tiller, seeing him in person, the frame's fantastic. And I was like, there is legit room for this to add a lot of good weight on and then be a real scary problem. But I'm with you. I think Tiller's just, he redshirted, correct. Sorry, correct me if I'm wrong. But
yeah.
And I think we're still seeing some rawness. He was going to be one that's going to take a little bit of time. I still think, it's early, but it looks like a guy that with another year just could explode, especially at Kansas. So I think he's just you're going to want to see the development throughout the year, and he could be a really big leap guy next year, especially with the 27 class. But for Kansas, I think it's just until Darren comes back, it's usually those two guys that are the big focus.
On the UConn side, I thought Eric Reba. Every time I hear his name, it's different.
I'll be honest. I got scared to say it, and I want to make you say it right. So I don't think it's Reby because everyone says it's wrong.
At Hoop Summit, they were saying Reby. Someone else said
Reba.
They're saying
no,
Reba now.
Reba. Like
that's what announcers are saying now. Regardless, I thought he's looked pretty good. Is he still a one and done? I'm not totally sure, but I think he kind of keeps getting better every single game. And he's been more impactful than I initially thought that he would be right off the bat. Really skilled, but the defensive presence and impact has been really encouraging. And God, solo ball rocks. He's just so much fun.
He's fun, man. I solo from game to game, just kind of, I'm like, hey, I'm in, like, screw it. I'm in. Like, he'd be a fun, because he's got good size, but he's also just kind of like a wild man out there. Like that might be the real Tasmanian devil. Eric is Reba. I'm gonna go with Reba. So one of us is right. He looked good again. I don't know if he's a one and done. And it's more of for draft fans. Like when you look at these guys, it's like, hey, the 26 class is gonna be stacked.
Yeah.
Everyone's going to also look at the 27 class and be like, it's supposed to be a lot weaker. So I think these are the type of guys like Eric, Badunga, maybe Tiller. You could look at it and be like, hey, I could test the waters and go back and really climb because of next year's class and really work on my game. So I think there's going to be a conversation at one point this year where you're going to be surprised that maybe some guys even projected late lottery right now be like, well, if I wait one more year,
might be top
NIL
5
and I might be going top 10. So it's going to be interesting, but I think it was a great game for him. I'm not downplaying, he played great, efficient. I think he was like 6 for 8 from the field, a couple blocks, big time performance from both freshmen for UConn on the road and then solo ball. Yeah. Was great.
All right. Well, we might hopefully have another bonus episode out Thursday afternoon. Keep an eye out for it. If not, we'll be back on Monday, per usual. Until then, he is Tyler Rucker. You can follow him at Tyler_Rucker. I'm Tyler Metcalf. You can follow me at TMetcalf11. Find all our stuff at NoCeilingsNBA.com, No Ceilings YouTube, all that good stuff. Thank you for making us your first listen every day.